In my A2 production, I found that in order to gain constructive criticism of my products, I had to gain audience feedback in order to make any changes or choose certain decisions. In Real Media Text, I found that a company used various ways of conducting audience research to gain appropriate feedback. I found that companies such as the Sheffield Star and the Rotherham Advertiser firstly researched the audiences who were most likely to consume a given product and in turn come up with an audience profile based on statistics of the ages, gender, social class, and total to enhance their product based upon these factors. Other methods I found were used were gaining quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data was normally found through counting people within the audience. To gain this data, the company would do such things as creating questionnaires and finding data figures using JITREG and other websites. This method was entirely numerically based. Qualitative data was commonly found by companies through personal opinion. This in turn used feedback from focus groups, face-to-face interviews, and in certain questionnaires when asking questions such as, "Do you like the content in the Sheffield Star?" The last method I found was voluntary data. Many of these companies did not use this, as in most cases, this was unreliable as readers were often unwilling to fill in electronic surveys and voting. However, this method I found was used within national newspapers such as The Sun. Firstly, when creating my product, I decided to create an ideal reader for my newspaper who would purchase and enjoy my newspaper like other local works. To do this, I had to research into data used on JITREG to find out who my primary audience would be. After typing MEXA in the data report on the website, I found that the females aged 35 to 45 were most likely to read my newspaper at the time of research. Also, looking at the specific classes, I found that lower middle to working class were the highest out of all the classes within my local area, and therefore I decided to target this specific set audience. I firstly gave my audience feedback when doing Appendix 5, as the task was to present our ideas to the class and our teachers in order to gain feedback from them. This presentation was meant to show our initial ideas, which would then be changed by the process of feedback so that we could plan our products further and into more detail. After we pitched our ideas to the class, we were given both verbal feedback from our teacher and written feedback from our peers, which explained what we had to improve on. Once this was done, for Appendix 6 we had to analyse the feedback we had just gained. In order to fully analyse the feedback given, I had to sort qualitative feedback, being the person's direct opinion, from the quantitative, which was commonly a tick box answer. To easily sort out the quantitative feedback, I used Microsoft Excel to transfer the numerical data onto a graph, whereas the qualitative comments would be placed onto a grid. Through the use of these appendices, I was able to learn what people wanted out of a local newspaper. For example, questions such as, "Do you think the cell line is appropriate?" and "What frequency would you prefer for a newspaper?" enabled me to change my original cell line, as it wasn't effective, and helped me decide which frequency an audience would most like. Within the questionnaire, I also specifically asked qualitative questions in order to find out what the reader would most like. For example, what businesses would you suggest I advertise in my local newspaper? And in turn help me cater for my own audience in further detail. Other tools I used to gain feedback were again creating a questionnaire on Microsoft Word. I used this as I was unsure which masthead an audience would most likely be attracted to and pick up if it was seen in a local newsagent. Therefore, I decided to print off a tick box questionnaire displaying 5 of the mastheads which I had created for my newspaper. I then gave 17 questionnaires to my family and friends and analysed the feedback again to find out which masthead would appear on my local newspaper. To find out the results, I placed the quantitative results on a pie chart to represent each section as one masthead and was able to find out the winning masthead chosen by my peers. During the course of the production, I have learnt that feedback is especially useful when looking for a wider opinion rather than just your own, and helps you to further your product because of the variety of ideas. I also found that, especially through the qualitative feedback, that as well as choosing ideas, you can also alter your current idea. For example, to begin with, I decided that I would use a masthead name to parody the star, and in turn thought of the meteor or the comet. However, through qualitative feedback, one of my criticisms were it didn't reflect your local area, and therefore enhanced the masthead title to the Mexra Meteor. Lastly, if I had to do this production again, I would do several things differently when obtaining feedback. Firstly, I could have asked peer groups of the ages 35 to 45 on what they personally would have preferred to have in my newspaper, as very few questions answered were from a person of these ages, and mainly from people under 20. This meant I had to research in further detail compared to an easier solution. I also could have used Vox Pops to find out information from the audiences in my area about specific products such as radio advertisements.